Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street Energy Web Foundation, or the EWT Token Exchange update here today for you guys. Before we go into it, don't forget to obviously check out the other videos on the channel, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you have not done so already. Getting back into the flow of videos here. The last EWT video we did was a few weeks ago. I'm literally running through all the different projects and stuff at the moment after being away for a couple of weeks. But I'm bringing this one to the attention because a few people have asked about some actual specific updates on EWT as a token, and also all this going on about updates around, are they going with parachains? Are they going to change the token or anything like this? And there's been a lot of conversation around the token being replaced or like changed over, and we've seen a lot of this around the markets, around the projects over many years. Not Energy Web, of course, but a multitude of them. Just all of a sudden go, oh, we're going to change the token, and there's a whole migration period, and half the people don't realize it's happening, and then they miss out, or it's delayed, and then the price fluctuates. All these crazy variables kick in, right? And people get annoyed and frustrated. So we'll debunk a few of those things in a second as we go into further topics. We're going to start off quickly with the staking pool. I do have the video hopefully coming out on Sunday evening about how to stake EWT. If you haven't done it before, it's actually a relatively simple process. So we'll make sure that we're crystal clear on how to do that, what you need to do it as well. Maybe I'll give you guys an advancement on like what tools and things you might need before you do it, so that you can plan ahead. There's a mix of things like MetaMask and ledgers, etc., that you might need to require for that. But the main point about this particular conversation, if you remember a few videos back with EWT, we originally had the consortia relay staking, which I was a part of for, I think it was about a year or so, something like that, maybe 9-10 months, with a really good APY actually. But then this transformed on a reward system based on your performance and your collaboration and integration with the consortia to determine whether you went on a green. I think there was a silver one, possibly. There was definitely a gold staking pool as well. This was announced towards the latter stages of last year, around December time. And then we had the green pool launch, but we didn't have the others. And then Energy Web came out and said basically that there's a bit of an issue in the back end. Actually, they didn't bring out the further pools with the higher APYs just yet. So the 6% APY I still think is pretty decent. You can get some good returns on the EWT token on that, or if you are one that compound those interests and sell them on, either way is all good. But that still lasts until December this year. So there's plenty of time to get involved in that. As it says, hourly rewards of compounding still available there. And to be honest, there's still a lot of space as well to get involved in that. But yeah, no news as of yet of the additional pools still coming out. In all honesty, and this is just complete speculation, I have a feeling they might have pulled the gold and potentially the other ones because of the amount of people that were using it, and perhaps the higher stakers, maybe, or higher portfolio holding of EWT holders out there, wallet holders, they perhaps scratching their heads going, oh, actually there's a lot of APY to give out and a lot of EWT to give out. So maybe, just maybe, that was why. But either way, I still think this is pretty decent. I'm not too angry. It was obviously a bit annoying not to have the higher ones, but this is still pretty good going. So that's a bit of an update on there, because I know a load of you have been asking about these pools. I have not seen any information otherwise regarding this. I have reached out to the social media teams and stuff like that as well, and on LinkedIn. And pretty much what I've been saying, bar my speculative aspect, is where they are with this at the moment. So I don't anticipate anything specific, because even when back December, I think they mentioned something along the lines that by Q2 we might have it. So who knows? It might pop up in the next couple of months. We'll just have to wait and see. The other big bit here is Energy Web X. Okay, so they've just delivered this massive light paper even, and a roadmap. Now the roadmap is a bit weird. I don't know if anyone's seen this yet. I'll leave the links in the descriptions and comments. It's worth listening to this in some aspects. It's about an hour long, loads of different topics, conversations, and a really big Q&A at the end, which I really like from projects, to be honest. There's so many events and webinars I sit on, and the QA is either not long enough or it just doesn't happen at all. I think it's really important that projects, and particularly people like CEOs and high leading people in their companies do respond to them, how big or little those questions are, and how maybe just maybe sometimes these questions can be a bit intrusive, not necessarily like technologically, but like questions that might be against or some like PR element or FUD or whatever it might be. I will give these guys credit because they literally answered pretty much most, if not all, the questions, and even the tricky ones and the hard ones, and perhaps the ones that a lot of companies just wouldn't answer. So I think it was really good that they have that transparency. And if you're going to talk about blockchain and transparency, especially in the energy sector, well, you're going to have to back that up with transparency and answers as well from the general public, your token holders, and of course stakeholders as well. I mean, if you annoy the holders, you can also potentially annoy the stakeholders and your enterprise customers in the near future. So you have to be really honest and transparent. So I really liked that they did that. But pulling back in this topic about Energy Web X, this is where I think a lot of the FUD has come out over the last few months, where there were these rumors about this technological advancement or this kind of like framework advancement, if you like, for Energy Web Foundation to go into this new way of methodology and the way that it presents itself and all those things. And there was a kind of a conversation around in public about, is the EWT token going to be replaced? Because EWX is essentially its own kind of like chain mechanism, its own like profile within its own group of companies to take them forward and integrate with the enterprise. So there's a lot of umming and ahhing and like concern that, oh god, is this another project that's just going to falsify the EWT token, or is it just not going to be used as they said it would? So in that webinar, I'm not going to play it, but I did take quite a lot of notes in that as I was reading and listening through it. But in general, the EWT token is not going anywhere. So there's also conversations, I don't want to go branch off into the other conversation just yet, but there's the talk about the parachain aspects, Polkadot integration, is that going ahead or not? But they did make a valid point that, of course, if they want to go through the parachain side of things, you have to get a slot. And I think we covered that kind of thing with a multitude of projects in the past. And there's like a big voting system, etc., of how to get involved in that. And is that even applicable to Energy Web? Do they actually need a relay chain or anything like this? So that's certainly a bit of the topic that we'll talk about directly after the WebX situation. But to that point about the EWT token, from what they were saying in the webinar, and that was coming from, of course, like the CEO of Energy Web, Jesse, of course, he was basically saying there's two avenues of Energy Web Foundation as a company. There's the WebX side of things, and then obviously the other side as well, relating to various different application of what they want to try and achieve. But the EWT token itself will be the prominent focal point of utilization of that. So basically the EWT will still be used for securing the worker node networks, which is another topic, which has just come out in the last few weeks. But also the element of like the security, the application, or the power of the applications, in other words, and just general functionality of either of those avenue of chains and an application and operation of Energy Web Foundation as a whole. So it's not going anywhere, apparently. Hopefully that sticks. You never know with the evolution of technology and everything, how things can change. But yeah, it'd be pretty depressing, wouldn't it, if they just slated the EWT token and brought out a new one. The nightmares of migrations I've seen over the years is quite significant. And I think we're in a bit of a limbo moment where we've got a lot of retail holders in the world, of course, people, putting a lot of money in there, a lot of trust. And this kind of migration thing, it confuses a lot of people sometimes. If you're on the ball, brilliant. But it kind of just like dismantles that whole kind of relationship. And I know, obviously, these kind of companies and projects aren't necessarily fully here for massive retail investors, essentially. They're here to make money, guys. They're here to make money with enterprise and develop and integrate that Web3 formality like further on. So we just got to have that in our minds that we're kind of helping and assisting whilst getting rewarded at the same time with things like staking, etc., along the way to help this movement, if you like. So just quickly on here, so these guys have obviously been going for some time. And it's really interesting to see the development of this. So there's a multitude of different things coming in, and it's all mentioned on the roadmap in the webinar. They've got the data exchange side of things, the green proofs. This is very much associated with the thing that we mentioned a few weeks ago about the fuel, the transparency of fuel costs and sustainability elements of that. And that's just one example. We can talk about renewable energy in general, how that is accumulated, how is it put back into the grid, is it transparent? If I sell carbon credits on the market to you and vice versa, who's regulating that, who's validating that, who's processing it, and what price structure, what standards structure in terms of the cost monetary aspects of it is being like regulated and followed through all the way through, hence why blockchain kicks in and all these like validation nodes, etc. But this is also taking part of in terms of worker node networks as well, which is very important for like the enterprise level of that as well. There's a multitude of different things that they're bringing in through this WebEx platform and system. So this, for example, proof of good work, Energy Web releases worker nodes. This was announced last month, but it's still an important part of this, of course. The worker node toolkit, a new technology that enables enterprises to construct distributed computing networks that securely execute sensitive business operations impacting multiple companies. There's a lot of jargon word there, but in a nutshell, it's very much developed and evolved what it always set out to do, to be honest, in terms of, as I mentioned just earlier, about the verification process, the proofs, digital proofs in this instance as well, both as a user and as a company. And then, of course, the transparency of it all as well. But in the back end, when you're developing these systems and validating them, hence the EWT tokens involvement in this of powering that and the integration side of that as well. This is how it kind of like all links together. So here it says, for example, when we talk about the complexities and the legalities, the technical issues with the existing energy systems, the Energy Web Worker Node Toolkit solves these challenges by enabling enterprises to configure, launch, and maintain distributed computing networks that ingest data from external sources, execute custom workflows based on business logic, and vote on results in order to establish consensus without revealing or modifying the underlying data. So this is very much about keeping it transparent and valid. And I guess the word confidence can come and kick in here as well, from, as I said, enterprise and end user usage too. So it's very technical. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know every single intricate detail about this, but I do have a very big understanding, of course, of Web3, having worked in the space for a few years now, but particularly have a big interest in the energy sector, which I do have a big involvement and experience in as well, to understand that there is a big hole to fill with Web3 adoption and development, and Energy Web, in my opinion, is always one of those ones that's been ahead of the game. Huge integrations with likes of European Commission and other worldwide organizations to develop and produce what is required to take the technological advancements to another level in the energy sector. So these are really important to see the full developments occurring with Energy Web. I think we've seen it grow so much, not necessarily in price of the token, but as a technology and as a project and as a company, it's going in a massively right direction. Huge integrations with the World Economic Forum. I'm not a massive fan of them, obviously, and I think I've made that quite clear in many videos, but we follow the money in some aspects. I've been called a hypocrite in the past, and I do agree with that in the sense that we're almost investing in things that are the demise of society, the demise of working society, and potentially things of control and aspects of that coming in the near future with the likes of CBDCs, etc. Will that integrate with climate control, climate change, potential climate lockdowns? Who knows? All these things I'm sure are going to come, and they kind of integrate in themselves. So at this moment in time, we sit here and go, okay, what are the projects that are involved and developing in these areas? Can we make money off them? It's a bit of a weird moral thing that goes around in my head all the time. But I'm sat here as an investor of EWT. I'm very interested and excited about the developments of it. Whether or not at the end of this, in the near future, becomes the crazy dystopian world that I think it will come is another question. But it remains to be seen, and it's certainly something right now that we just have to kind of like look at it as what it is right now. So it's very interesting from Energy Web's element side of things. But in terms of all of this, his actual piece from the light paper about the EWT token here. So we're talking about the worker nodes, and I mentioned earlier that EWT will be still used for everything, both across those avenues of chains that Energy Web wants to use. EWT is still the focal point. So here, instead of launching a new token with Energy Web X blockchain, Energy Web X will be powered by the native token of the existing Energy Web chain, Energy Web token, EWT, in partnership with Aventus. This is another topic. This could be a really long video, but I'm going to try and keep it short. Aventus are a massive kind of like incorporator, if you like, of bringing and integrating Web3 solutions to enterprise. So Energy Web X you could see as like a massive solution specifically for the energy sector, but they will be utilizing and partnering with Aventus to help with that integration, using their network power, the technology advancements that the Aventus have themselves to integrate further. And one thing I will mention about this is that when we talk about the topic about, should Energy Web use Polkadot? Should it use Polygon? All these different chains, actually the necessity to use relay chains is massively or potentially not needed because of the technological power that Energy Web and Energy Web X has as a whole. It can potentially power with itself through the likes of Aventus, as an example, which is a blockchain. So yeah, there's an opportunity through these avenues without having to use relays and things like that. So when people ask in the comments, or they've seen on certain snippets on socials, they're going to power Polkadot, they've had experiments with that. We've seen it, of course, and we've seen it even with the staking platforms in the past as well. But the formality of this is that actually to really solidify the EWT usage and utility, and essentially vitalize EWT or Energy Web in general across this, they want to have as much focus as possible and solidity in between themselves, rather than going into other relays and connectivities, right? So when we're looking at enterprise, they're looking for real specific solutions. Otherwise they could just go and do this themselves, or like go and find other chains and do it through that. The fact of the matter is the energy sector needs specifically energy expertise in a Web3 format, and that's exactly what EWT have. You could go to any generic chain like Polygon, for example, or any of these other ones which boast fantastic technology. I'm not like complaining against that at all. I've been heavily involved with Polygon over the last couple of years in the gaming formats, and they suit gaming very well, but maybe not perhaps the energy side, irrespective of like the carbon emissions and all that stuff that they produce or don't produce, or how many transactions per second. It's about the uniqueness and the speciality of you as a chain, if you were a blockchain yourself. So in this format, why on earth would big corporations and organizations and enterprise go for a generic chain that has a multitude of skills when they could go for a really specific specialized one, like Energy Web as an example, with the massive knowledge, the expertise they have, things like the integration we just mentioned about the worker nodes, the integration of the proof of green, all of these things, proof of good work, sorry, I'm reading the wrong words. All of these things match up, and all of these things help towards that case. So hopefully that makes sense to a lot of you out there, that is a reason, or one of the main reasons why an enterprise side of things, or a government level, parliamentary level, would go for a specific, unique area, not just to a generic chain that does everything and anything, the jack of all trades blockchains, right? There is an argument to say that you would, because it has a multitude of different avenues you could go down. But when you're talking about a specific sector, they want to be specifically integrated, right? So Aventus here, onboarding enterprises to Web3, they're working heavily with Energy Web right now. And in fact, I didn't even know this. Aventus was quite new to me a few weeks back, to be fair, but I didn't know it had its own token and its own chain. So I'm really looking forward to doing some extra research on that. I'm always learning, even myself, with all the knowledge that I have in this space already. I'm learning every day. It's crazy. And it'd be really interesting to see some developments on the price of this token as enterprise kicks in over the next 5-10 years and really adopts Web3. It's going to need companies like this to kind of bridge that. So I'm really interested to see this, because they have massive projections. I mean, look at this. According to Gartner, the enterprise blockchain market size was valued at 4.9 billion in 2021 and projected, listen to this, to reach 67.4 billion by 2026. That is phenomenal. So I'm going to really look into Aventus. If you guys are holding Aventus already, or Aventus, I think there's a special way of saying it right. If you're holding this or know about it, drop comments. Honestly, I want to hear questions. I want to hear answers. I want knowledge. I love it. So let's look at that together for sure. But yeah, of course, one of the big partnerships, Energy Web, and Energy Web utilizing them to really power through that. It's very interesting. So, in terms of like the actual blockchain side of things, energy businesses simply do not need generic blockchains. So they need specialists like Energy or Energy WebX, as an example. So we've got this kind of like publicly verifiable aspect to it. We've got the processing of data in specific ways, and this worker node side of things, the EWX solutions. It's all fitting together. I think it's really exciting. That's not to say that they won't go with Polkadot as a parachain, but of course you do need the slots, as we mentioned earlier. But for sure, Energy Web X, as it is right now, can go with pretty much any relay chain that it wanted to. So there's no primary reason really to move forward with a specific relay chain. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's open, and it really depends, I believe, in the next sort of 6 to 12 months of its development of Energy WebX. And relating back to, actually, if I can just hover over it, this was the roadmap, guys. I was a bit disappointed how they presented this. I appreciate it probably hiding a bit and maybe wanting more people to read the light paper a bit more. But even in the light paper, it didn't kind of answer a lot of the roadmap situations, but you can get a bit of a feel here as to what they're trying to incorporate. So we mentioned about these kind of like composer aspects here. This is all related to like the worker nodes and things as well, asset management toolkits and the marketplace beta and the alphas as well. This is heavily related to our utility as users as well within the staking platforms and ability to use EWT and other different formats. And there's loads of other things here from the development side of things. And this is interesting as well. This is relating to Bitcoin in terms of that integration as well. Hopefully, potentially helping with the sustainability aspect of it. Although I did see a very interesting chart on LinkedIn earlier today. I'll try and share it on the community section from one of my friends, Tom. He was showing Bitcoin versus a load of other chains and a load of other banking situations. We covered that in a video about 2021, actually, about that kind of like FUD situation around how unsustainable Bitcoin is and all this stuff. But of course, it needs to be improved in some aspects. So this is going to be really interesting. And as I mentioned earlier about the sustainability air fuel, I think this stands for. So obviously progression on that side of things, huge aviation industry. We covered that in the last video. So this is kind of like what I'm saying is like, the next few months, the next few quarters are really imperative to then develop, do we need another relay chain? Can we do this ourselves and work with the likes of Aventus to integrate further? That's where it gets really interesting for me. But either way, I'm not really fussed. All that kind of does really is empower the EWT token even further, and also obviously the relay chain that they potentially choose in the near future, whether that is the parachain or others. But right now, and in that webinar specifically, they believe, I feel as well, that Energy Web X is powerful and strong enough to do its own thing and not need these other chains. I think that's the way it will go. And I think they will do as much as they can to make that happen. And as I said, just use, essentially I would call it an intermediary, a bridging platform of the likes of Aventus to really start integrating with enterprise. The network of Aventus is absolutely huge ecosystem, huge partnerships and everything like that. There's a multitude of different things here to look at. We can go on forever talking about them by the looks of it. I'm looking forward to doing the video. But yeah, very interesting indeed to see these developments. But I thought I'd just touch on these really because there's a lot of questions about FUD and conversations around EWT. Is it falling apart? Is it going to disappear? At the moment, completely 100% at the moment, it's not going anywhere. If anything, it's going to get stronger and stronger. So let's just keep an eye out for that. I'll leave a link to this light paper as well. It's very interesting. It goes into full detail. If you're a technical whiz, I really like to hear your thoughts on a lot of this as well. I understand the very interesting concepts around the worker nodes, etc. I'd really love to hear from someone out there that works in substrates and any other areas within coding and all these kind of things, building blockchain, etc., smart contracts. Your thoughts on this light paper, because it goes beyond my mind in some of these areas, but I do have the general understanding of it. But as I said, I'm not going to pretend and sit here and I know all the terminologies of these things. But in a nutshell, when they do break it down, I'm sitting there going, wow, this is actually an amazing development over the last few years that they've been working on all this stuff, and very exciting to see as an investor, as a holder of EWT, where this could be going. So let us know in the comments below what you think about all that. And I'm certainly interested to see the further developments, as I said, of EWT and Energy Web with this Energy Web X situation. On that note, let's go quickly into the chart of EWT, because again, another thing we keep getting bombarded with is, why isn't EWT rising in price? Why is it dropping? Why is it so low? Guys, we have to really understand the early complexities of development. Now, I was at the Digital Pound Foundation event on Monday about CBDCs, and one of my well, it's actually a family friend as well, but certainly someone I know very well, Michael Manelli. He was absolutely fantastic from ZN Group, and he, way back in the 70s, were developing the first stances of blockchain before they even knew it was going to be an actual thing. But they certainly had the calculations, the development aspect, just not the technology yet to integrate blockchain. So blockchain's not like new as people think it is, but the incorporation now of it, the utilization of it, and the integration of it is still very early, still working out. You can even look at that light paper in the roadmap from Energy Web X, clear as day that they are absolutely working on it, they're developing it, but it's still not fully ready for that next level, the top levels, to replace existing systems that have been for decades, if not centuries in some cases. So we're on the cusp of it. And we've got to remember that as well in the price points and the history, the data that we've got in front of us and previously as well. So for me, I'm sitting there going, yes, okay, EWT is a slightly higher priced token to many other chains out there or many other utility tokens. But in a nutshell, this hasn't fully been switched on yet. It's very beginning stages. And yes, it did have some great fluctuations upwards towards that kind of $24, $25 mark back here in 2021. I remember it very well. I was very excited, didn't do anything with it, and it dropped down. I was like, oh, well, that was a waste of time. But then I did have EWT and staking, so it could have matched up in that way by now, I don't know. But my point being is that we're back down at these lower regions, and there's plenty of opportunity for growth, not just in the token, but obviously the actual utility and usage as a token and as the company itself. Implementation worldwide, guys, this is huge. And people have always asked me in the past, like, what's my price prediction? I don't really massively like price predictions, but if I'm going on algorithm of historic data, where I think it's going, and certainly the monetary values of these energy sectors and the sector of blockchain and everything in general, and enterprise especially, I can easily see this kind of token price of $100, $200 by 2025 around that area. And the reason I pick out 2025 is because this is when all the CBDC RTGS systems kick in. It's when enterprise blockchain really fully, in my opinion, takes off. And that gap between 2025 and 2030, yes, there'll be fluctuations, there'll be massive bull cycles, massive winter cycles again, for sure. But by 2030, when all these sustainable goals come in that were surprised by us in 2015, I think, the UN documentation of sustainability and diversification, you can download it off the UN website, aka Agenda 30. Loads of theories, loads of concepts around that as to dystopian world, or is it actually helping us? Who knows? But the technological advancements and the narratives around all these kind of chains, these projects, these technologies are all focused on the 2030 goal. So when 2025 kicks in as this real starting point, I can honestly see these things absolutely flying. And when this is switched on, guys, everyone's going to be left behind. And that's not one of those nonsense YouTuber catchphrases and stuff. I generally believe and feel, and arguably partially know, based on my experiences, my knowledge in these areas and sectors, that this is the way it can go. And I say the word can go. Anything can happen at any time, of course, but realistically, this isn't going anywhere. Whether the EW token disappears or not is another question as well. But my whole point about the sector, the use of blockchain, the use of technology like this is not going anywhere. It's only at the beginning. So don't get too frustrated when you're sitting there going, oh, all these amazing announcements are coming out and the price isn't moving. Well, first of all, we're in a bear market. We're in an economic turmoil around the world. Bills are going up. Hardly anyone's got any money anymore. And everyone's kind of getting down and sad. And I hate the way the world is right now. All the other things going on, not going to mention them. I think we know. But like what I'm saying is that we're in a very opportunist area I generally believe anything under $10 of EWT is fantastic, and obviously the lower regions are even better. But if we look back here in 2022, is it relatively around the same price that it is now? So we've already had this kind of like sustainability pattern of like resistance, support mechanisms, where it should and shouldn't be. It's kind of like trying to ascertain that. Now, what's really interesting from a data perspective, I don't have it any further, unfortunately, beyond where is this, like October 2020. So that's still quite far back. I think that even might have been when it launched. I can't remember. But the point being is that we're at these areas and nothing below that has arguably been tested yet properly. So are we in a domain here where confidence could completely slip out because everyone's getting fed up and bored with it? Or is it going to sustain at this area? And I don't know whether they're using automated market makers. This is where there's a bit of an AI algorithm in the sense of the back that a lot of companies and projects out there pay money to companies, AMMs, to decipher the market and keep a fluctuated pattern or the floating of a token up in a certain area. For marketing purposes, or the ability if they've got a campaign coming up and they go, oh, well, we really don't want the price to go down because it will just ruin everything that we're working towards. That's just how it works. So whether or not they're using that or not is another question. Because you look at like Power Ledger and things like that, equally in an advanced stage, are lower prices. And there's obviously different things like supply and demand, and circulation supply and all these things to think about as well. But my point here is that just be cautious because there is an unknown here, but it's still at a very good positive area at a low point for a big opportunist area upwards. That's the main thing. There's a big gain opportunity. So it's floating around this one of the lower regions of the fib retracement level back here at 268 kind of area. I anticipate this to test this a bit more over the next coming weeks. I don't anticipate a huge jump up. We might get something similar like we saw here where we had the advancement from the sort of $3 to $5 increases in a short period of time, depending on the news announcements and developments over the next couple of quarters. But the long-term gain for me is to see the future development of this sector, what Energy Web is doing in general, and especially with the Energy Web X development and the progression of that. If I can get tokens around these prices, I'm not fussed. They go straight into my staking. I'm earning interest on them. Fantastic. If they come down lower, even more brilliant in some ways. But yeah, for sure, I wouldn't particularly like to see that support level broken. I'd like to see it hold and hopefully fluctuate around the area for sustainability purposes and confidence purposes and start triggering itself up as a bull cycle. In my opinion, I don't know fully, obviously, but I anticipate like more next year in 2024 into 2025 rather than any significant changes anytime soon this year. I think this year is very much a balancing act of interest rates and all these kind of things going on in the economic world that we're not really going to see any giant fluctuations of pricing. So performance indicators on the right hand side are working in the favor of accumulators for sure after that big uptake. So we're down on most instances, very, very slightly up on the week, not massively at all, but it is an opportunity if we look at these RSIs, for me personally as a bite point, very good on the 28-day and the 14-day showing at 41.41. Down here, I'm talking about the left bottom left reference here. The 90 days interesting as well on a 3-month pattern. I'd like to see that come down a bit further, maybe to 45.44 to take some really good intake of EWT, but I'm not angry at manually purchasing right now. So that is very much where it is at the moment. I think a few days ago, actually, the RSI came down quite a bit on the 14-day, which is a really good opportunity a couple of days ago if you are a big saver on the 20-30 cents or so. But in general, guys, there's loads to come. I know it's a bit of a longer video, but I think there's a lot to talk about and a lot of things to put to bed. As I said, any concerns, questions, comments, leave them below. That's going to wrap that up there. I think I nearly lost my voice talking too much. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next update video. Got loads of projects to cover in the next few days. I'm going to a wrestling convention tomorrow. Which is random. All the old school wrestlers, Big Show, everyone, Goldberg, all of that cool stuff in Manchester. Looking forward to it. A bit of a nerd day out, but great photo opportunities. See you soon. Bye-bye.